Look closely at the bird. It's perched, wings folded, head turned, exactly as it would have sat in life. Except it isn't alive, it's solid, hardened into a grey statue of itself, every feather preserved, frozen mid-motion, as if it had simply turned to stone where it stood. Over a decade ago, photographs like this began spreading across the internet. Birds, bats, small creatures, all rendered into eerie, lifelike statues, and every one of them found at the edge of a single lake in East Africa. And the story that travelled with those images was simple and chilling. There is a lake, people said, so deadly that any animal which touches its water is turned to stone. That isn't quite true. But the reality of this place is stranger than the myth, and in some ways more disturbing, because this lake is, at the very same time, one of the most lethal bodies of water on the entire planet, and the single most important cradle of life for millions of living creatures. This is Lake Natron, and I'm going to show you how both of those things can be true at once. Start with where it is, because the setting tells you why it's so strange. Lake Natron lies in the north of Tanzania, close to the border with Kenya, in the shadow of a mountain the Maasai call Ol Doinyo Lengai, the Mountain of God. And this is no ordinary volcano. Every other volcano on Earth, when it erupts, glows red and orange with molten rock heated past 1,000 degrees. Ol Doinyo Lengai does something no other active volcano on the planet does. It erupts a lava so chemically bizarre, so much cooler than any other, only around 500 degrees, that in daylight it does not glow at all. It runs black, it flows like dark oil down the slopes, then turns ghost white as it cools. It is, quite literally, the coldest, strangest lava on Earth, and it exists in this one place and nowhere else. There's a Maasai legend about that mountain too. They say their god withdrew to its summit after being struck by a hunter's arrow. And it's that mountain's unique chemistry, sodium, carbonate, minerals unlike anywhere else, that washes down into the basin and poisons the water below. Because Lake Natron is not filled with ordinary water, it's a soda lake. Fed by hot springs loaded with sodium carbonate and other salts, the same family of minerals the ancient Egyptians used to mummify their dead. The water is intensely alkaline, in places approaching the caustic bite of ammonia, with a pH high enough to damage the skin and eyes of anything not adapted to it. And it's hot. In the shallows, under the equatorial sun, the temperature can climb to around 60 degrees Celsius. That's roughly 140 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to scald. So picture the reality of it. A shallow blood-red lake, shimmering with heat, filled with a scalding caustic brine, sitting at the foot of a volcano that bleeds black. And yes, the red. From the air, huge stretches of Lake Natron glow a deep, unsettling red, the colour of rust or of dried blood. It looks like something from another planet or from a nightmare. That colour comes from tiny, salt-loving microorganisms that thrive in the extreme water and produce red pigments as they bloom. So the lake earns its terrifying look, honestly. It really does run the colour of blood. Now, back to those statues, because this is where the myth and the truth finally split apart, and you need to see exactly how. The story says the lake petrifies living animals on contact. It does not. What actually happens is quieter, and in its own way, sadder. When the lake's surface is calm, it becomes almost perfectly reflective, a vast mirror under the sky, and birds flying over open water navigate using reflections. Some researchers believe the birds are fooled, mistaking the mirror-flat lake for clear open air and crashing straight into it. Others simply die from the heat and the water, but either way, the animal dies first. And then the lake goes to work on the body. The very same sodium carbonate that makes this water so hostile is a superb preservative. As a dead creature dries out in that mineral-rich brine, it becomes coated, calcified, hardened, its shape locked in place, its feathers and features turn to that grey, statue-like stone. It is quite literally being mummified by the lake, using the same chemistry that preserved pharaohs thousands of years ago. There's one more piece to the myth, and it's worth being honest about. Those famous, haunting photographs, the bird on the branch, the bat with its wings spread, were composed by a photographer who gathered the already dead, already calcified creatures from the shoreline and carefully posed them to look alive again for an art series. They are real preserved animals, but the eerie, lifelike scenes were arranged. The lake didn't freeze them mid-flight. It quietly hardened their remains after they were gone, and an artist gave them one last, unsettling performance. So no, Lake Natron does not turn the living to stone. It preserves the dead, which is disturbing enough on its own, but it raises the obvious question. If the water is this lethal, this hot, this corrosive, then surely nothing could survive here at all. And this is the turn that makes Lake Natron one of the most extraordinary places on the planet. Because that same deadly lake is absolutely teeming with life. In fact, it is the single most important birthplace for one of the most recognisable birds on Earth, the flamingo. Lake Natron is the primary breeding ground for the lesser flamingo. Roughly 3/4 of every lesser flamingo alive, well over 1 million birds, in some years far more, are born right here on the caustic mudflats of this poison lake. It is essentially the only place in East Africa they reliably breed at all. If Lake Natron were to vanish, the lesser flamingo as a species would be pushed to the brink. And here is the beautiful, brutal logic of why. The very things that make this lake so deadly are exactly what make it a perfect nursery. Those scalding, corrosive waters that kill almost everything else form a natural moat. The predators, the foxes, the hyenas, the big cats, the animals that would happily eat flamingo eggs and chicks cannot cross that burning caustic barrier. So the flamingos build their little cone-shaped mud nests out on islands and flats in the middle of the lake, in the one place on Earth almost nothing can follow them. And when the eggs hatch, the lake stages one of the strangest spectacles in all of nature. Tens of thousands of grey chicks gather into vast creches and set off on foot across the burning flats, marching toward fresh water, guarded by the sheer scale of their own numbers. Over 1 million adults, ringed in pink, wheel and gather across a lake the colour of blood. It is one of the greatest concentrations of new life anywhere on the continent, and it happens in the last place on Earth you'd ever expect to find it. The flamingos are built to endure what would destroy almost anything else, with tough, scaled skin on their legs to withstand the water. And they feed on the very thing that turns the lake red, those blooms of salt-loving microorganisms. The pigment that stains the water is the same pigment that, passed up the food chain, blushes their feathers pink. The lake's deadliness isn't a threat to them, it's their protection, their food and their fortress all at once. They don't just survive the poison, they are made of it, and they aren't even alone. In the water itself, at the cooler edges where the hot springs flow in, live small, tough fish, a specialised species found almost nowhere else, adapted to breed and feed in water near the chemistry of oven cleaner. Any ordinary fish dropped into most of this lake would die in moments. These live their whole lives in it. Even here, in one of the harshest bodies of water on the planet, life didn't just cling on, it moved in and made a home. So look at Lake Natron again, and hold both truths in your head at the same time. A lake that scalds and burns and mummifies the dead into stone, and a lake that cradles more than 1 million newborn flamingos, one of the greatest gatherings of new life in the natural world. Death and birth in the very same water. The myth got one thing right: this is a lake of the dead. It just left out that it is also impossibly a lake of the living, which makes what's threatened here all the more troubling. Over the years, there have been repeated proposals to industrialise Lake Natron, to build plants that would extract the very soda ash the lake is made of, and schemes that could alter the delicate flow of water into the basin. Conservationists have fought them off again and again because the fear is stark and simple. Disturb this strange, hostile, perfectly balanced place, and you don't just damage a weird red lake. You could wipe out the nursery of an entire species and silence one of the last great spectacles of life on the continent. That's the paradox the myth never told you. The most poisonous lake in Africa isn't a place of death at all. It's one of the last places on Earth where over 1 million lives begin, protected, fed, and hidden by the very water that would destroy anything foolish enough to think it was harmless.